Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas here with Julie Sparks this morning. She is from ICANN Housing. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
ICANN, does it stand for something?
Actually, not really, no. It was an acronym, but long forgotten. So, although it is nice, it does have a nice connotation.
And what is that connotation?
Well, we provide housing for folks who have, are homeless and who have mental health issues. And for any of us, and especially for folks who struggle, it's always a good idea to have an attitude that says, well, I can do this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think a lot of people believe that everybody homeless has mental health issues. Help us sort this out.
That's not the case any more than it is in the general population. Homelessness happens. It's not something that happens to other people. It happens to people that we know, and the circumstances are diverse. There are people who maybe have lived on the streets for years on end or for lengthy periods of time and who maybe suffer with mental health or even substance abuse issues. But there's also a lot of other circumstances where people just perhaps live in great poverty and maybe the family relationships break down. And the next thing you know, they don't have a place to be or the resources to get to that next place. And they find themselves on the street, and it's quite a surprise.
Oh, exactly.
Or in their car.
How did I get here?
Yeah,
this was never what I signed up for.
It's very disorienting and scary.
Mm-hmm. Scary and dangerous, yes?
It is dangerous. Statistics have shown that folks who live on the streets, people who are homeless, are far more the victims of crime than the perpetrators, and I think that might be a misnomer for some folks, but that's the case.
Well, help us sort through what is going on locally and in our own community. Do we see more or less homelessness?
We see there's been a steady decline over the last small number of years. There's a good organized effort locally. A lot of agencies and good people involved that work closely together to try to catch everyone and not have folks fall through the cracks and to coordinate services and all those things. But there are still hundreds of people in our community, many of whom are in emergency shelters, some of whom are on the street, who are considered homeless. And, staying in an emergency shelter for extended periods of time is no life. It's, so decent to have a roof, but it's about the beginning and the end of that. So there's a lot of, and then we have marginally housed people.
What would that mean?
Well, young people are a great example of that, late teens, early 20s, where they kind of do a little couch surfing. They don't necessarily have an address, but they stay with you for a few weeks, or they stay over there for a few weeks, but they really don't have a place to call their own. And it's hard to build a life off of that.
Not a lot of stability there.
No.
But we're talking about people in that instance who could have a place. They could get an apartment or something, yes? Or
no,
they're not
really. It's
earning
not that
enough.
simple, yeah. A lot of it has to do literally with income, and that's a primary focus in our local community because we do have, I hate to say, decent shelters and some housing opportunities, though there's never enough to meet the need. But we're making progress, and we're making great progress with veterans. But, to say that you can, I'll give you an example. Okay, one of the things that our community is able to do, and it's not a guarantee, but we may be able to help somebody with that security deposit. They call it housing stability. So it may not be that everyone needs tremendous amounts of help. Folks may just need a little bit. Maybe they are employed but underemployed and can't just come up with all of that and still take care of their children if they have them and everything. So also one of the barriers that people face a lot of times is a lack of identity, Social Security, birth certificates, driver's license, those kinds of things. So when you come to a landlord and, well, who are you? And they can't answer that. So for various reasons, again, maybe they had to leave a home quickly. Then that's a barrier. So we try to help overcome those barriers for people who maybe don't need a whole lot of help, even if they do have mental health issues. There are many of us walking around who do and who manage. So it really spans the gamut from, again, folks who've been on the street for maybe even multiple years, who may have severe mental health issues and maybe even some substance abuse issues, to folks who just lost their job unexpectedly and boom,
right,
don't have a reserve.
And that seems like one thing that could be a domino effect, job loss, maybe turn to alcohol or some kind of substance abuse, which triggers a mental health issue. Yes, is that what you see?
It can trigger it in that it can certainly add stress to the circumstances. But there's plenty of folks who have mental health issues regardless of their housing status. So it is a burden, generally can be a burden regardless of your status.
You know, what you bring up is such a vicious cycle because, yes, being homeless certainly adds stress and would exacerbate some kind of mental health issues, and then mental health issues lead to being homeless. Where do you get out of that cycle?
Well, you're right, and the answer, like it's that simple. But generally speaking, the effort there for any human being and for the community is to sort of help that person do a few things: identify their own personal goals, but get connected to support services, whether it's medication, whether it's counseling, whether it's case management. It could be a lot of things. It could be a payee who can help them. Some folks live off of only Social Security because they're significantly disabled. This isn't just something you can brush aside at times.
Right.
And that's like $721 a month, so give that a try. Anyway.
That's, it's mind-bending, really, when you talk about it. And you said the word veterans. Now, if there's any population in our community who deserve nothing but respect and help in every possible way as far as plugging back in, some of them suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Absolutely.
What can we do for these people who have given everything?
The veterans in our community and across the nation, there was sort of the gauntlet was thrown down to work toward zero homelessness for veterans. It's been a small number of years now, and the goal was 2015. And while the nation didn't reach it, it got a lot closer, faster. In our community, we have a veterans task force that our agency spearheads, so all the agencies that might serve veterans come together and kind of coordinate. But what we found is, sure, some folks may definitely have PTSD and or other impediments, but they tend to be more resilient and a little less bothered and or maybe more quickly able to get on their feet. And so there's different types of programs. There's something called rapid rehousing, for example. So in that case, maybe you're helping somebody again with that security deposit or helping them with some portion of the rent for a small number of months, long enough for them to get reestablished or get that car or whatever the primary barrier is. And then in a relatively short period of time, they're like, okay, I got this.
What does ICANN do? What are the services you provide?
It's a good question. We start with outreach, which means anyone who is themselves homeless or knows of someone who needs assistance, they can come to us like a front door. So anyone who's experiencing that kind of need can come to our office, and also we go out on the streets and find people, and people call and say, hey, there's this guy or there's this woman. So we engage them and make every effort to start to connect them to the community. In our community, we have something called the homeless hotline. So anyone who literally needs housing has got to, at some point, call up and sort of get on that list, if you will.
And let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be that easy to do.
It's terrible. I mean, you're talking about all the personal information you can conceive of for as much as 30 to 45 minutes, and I would add with a small number of minutes on your phone. So none of this is easy.
If you have a phone.
If you have a phone. And so it's difficult. There's a lot of humility, and you could see where, I use the word depression, but where this is a hard nut to crack. But you get on the central list, and then we can help with folks get on there and meet those smaller barriers that I talked about with a driver's license, whatever it might be, ID. But then we also, as an agency, provide housing. So we would then actually literally pull from that list, and it would be folks who do suffer with some form of mental health issue. And we have, just like in any nonprofit agency, various programs with various eligibilities, and that's a little bit wearing on people also. But we have our own housing that we can help people with, and they'll pay a portion of their income, and as their income increases, they'll paying an increasing amount.
So as you're able to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real strong emphasis for folks is people feel good when they make revenue and as they increase that revenue. So it's a win-win all the way around. And then it makes resources spread, farther. But we also have vouchers, which basically means we have some funding that we can help people rent from local landlords who, once again, maybe the rent's $500, but they right now can only afford $350. So maybe we can help make up that difference, and they have that stable housing. And the concept is that our tagline is stable home, stable life. The concept is you get somebody under a roof and give them a measure of stability, then they can actually work on whatever it is that's in front of them. You try to figure things out from the back of a car, and all you're going to be thinking about is, where am I going to wash up? I mean, where am I going to get food? Once you get a roof, then you can start to look at, okay, maybe I will, gain some employment or try to reach back out to my family or get some support services, those kind of things.
Are you dealing with families or usually individuals?
Oh, absolutely. We deal with families. We deal with a lot of individuals, and a lot of individuals have kids, so it varies.
What do you see with the children? That's what, to me, that is the most heartbreaking part. These are people who are too young to have made bad choices. They did not sign up for this at all, and yet here they are.
Well, that's true, and it's duress on them just like it's duress on adults. So
what does it do to a child to have this be part of their reality?
It depends on their resiliency, but it can certainly create all kinds of barriers for them, whether it's difficulties at school, difficulties at home, difficulties with social relationships. It's not an easy cross to bear, no pun.
Have we been doing this too long enough to know if there's any connection between someone who is homeless as a child and someone who's homeless as an adult?
I can't verify that statistically, but I can tell you that the less coping mechanisms and the less resources a person knows how to access, the higher probability that they may end up in homelessness. So, and that's the thing. It's not just somebody making bad choices. That child is a great example. We like to ask ourselves, okay, at what age does that child become responsible for themselves? Mm-hmm. It's a fair question. But boy, what was put in the toolbox before they hit that magic age, and what was put in yours?
Right.
So you can't use a hammer if you don't have one.
Mm-hmm. And also, once something has been experienced, it seems like it's on your radar, and it's now a possibility. Most children are dealing with where this would not even be remotely close to what their reality is. But for a child who, oh my goodness, that movie where Will Smith and his son were,
yes.
For that young man to experience that with his dad, it's heartbreaking.
Well, it is, and I think statistics will bear out that what you're saying there, not just in regard to homelessness, but in regard to, crises and all the challenges that folks face. So, sure, those of us who have the least amount of stability are going to have a hard time as adults establishing that stability. It's not 100% either way, but yeah, it makes a big difference how you're raised and what your opportunities are as a young person and as an adult. I mean, if you've only ever known abject poverty, if you've only been a part of a family that's very marginalized or disenfranchised, and maybe people don't have the education and those kind of things. I mean, where are you supposed to get it?
For you, that's life.
It is life, and we all know that there's opportunity out there, but it's just a lot harder if you haven't had a shower. Mm-hmm. Or your clothes aren't laundered.
That seems so basic, but so true. We're visiting with Julie Sparks. She's from ICANN Housing. I'm going to take a short break. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.